Welcome to episode 2 of the Ignite Inspire podcast, the show where we explore the truth to success by interviewing leading entrepreneurs to find out what it takes to ignite success. In this episode, we're looking to have with us Lewis Crompton. Lewis teaches people how to trade financial markets in less than 30 minutes per day, creating an additional income stream that gives them greater choice, freedom, and time. And this is one of the big reasons I wanted Lewis on the podcast as one of the first set of guests. You see, lots of people can make money, but money can come and go extremely quickly. And if you don't know how to put your money to work for you, you can really struggle with your investments and long-term success. So Lewis is an industry expert at applying and teaching this important skill set. So before we get started, Lewis, on your background, I just want to ask you a couple of quick, crucial questions. So I know from watching your stories that you're an early morning riser. You wake up very early. What's your fuel for that early morning wake up? Is it coffee or is it tea?
It's coffee for me. And that's only a recent thing in the past couple of years. Before that, I didn't even touch coffee. And I still like to mix it up with caffeine free. So my body still thinks I'm doing the coffee thing, but actually I'm keeping the caffeine quite low.
Very nice. What's so like decaf?
Yeah.
Decaf coffee.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of decaf coffee after 2 o'clock. Otherwise, I'd end up like getting the jitters later evening. So awesome. That's solved that one. Another quick question I like to always ask: are you a reader?
Yes, big time.
What books?
Business books. So I used to read like business books or inspiring books before bed. That was like my time to read. Yeah. And then actually I stopped doing that because it wasn't helpful for me. And by helpful, I just mean that it would give me too many ideas. I'd be too excited. I'd be thinking about stuff and it would trigger all these different pathways in my brain to light up. And that's exactly what I didn't want to actually happen when I was trying to go to sleep and fall asleep. So I've now switched up. So I read like story books or drama books or that type of thing before bed.
I've seen on your story, what were you reading? Was it last night or the night before? Do you literally have like a book to read to go to sleep to then?
Yeah. So the one I'm reading at the moment is called The Midnight Library.
Okay, what's that? Just like little stories or?
No, so it's a whole storybook. It feels so childish calling something a storybook, doesn't it? But it is a storybook. Fiction. There we go. Just call it fiction. And it's about this girl called Nora. And one of my best friends is actually a girl called Nora, so I find it quite interesting reading it. And it's basically, I mean, I'm not all the way through the book, so I can't tell you everything it's about, but it's basically, from what I've surmised so far, is this girl who's quite depressed. She wants to kill herself, so she takes a load of pills to kill herself, and then she finds herself at the point of death at midnight in this place called the Midnight Library, where it takes you through all these different lives that she could have lived, and the whole premise is, from so far, she hasn't found a life that actually she really enjoyed. So basically saying like she created, from what I can tell so far, she's created her own misery because she's thought that these other paths she could have taken would have been so much better than the current life she's living. Right. And so this Midnight Library is showing her that these other paths weren't all they were cracked up to be in her fantasy land of what they would have been.
That's pretty interesting. I think that's what I'd say. I know depression's on the rise in the UK for sure. Just in the world at the minute. And I think you're always comparing yourself, aren't you, to other people. So it is interesting. And I think regret is one of those big things what people have and makes people struggle with their mental health. So it is interesting. It's what was the film Butterfly Effect, where I think it shows the alternative reality, and then I think they always end up dying in the alternative reality. So that's awesome. Are there any specific books what you think were integral to you becoming you?
Yeah, so a book called The One Thing. It's a really, really good book. Absolutely love it. There's another book called Focus, which I really, really love, and I often come back to that one. Yeah, those are probably 2 books. I mean, I've read hundreds of books, but those are 2 that I always kind of come back to. I'm not going to say the standard thing of Think and Grow Rich. I wasn't that big a fan. I thought it was just a long book there to get myself through. Yeah,
it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? What's the other one everyone always says? How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, right, yeah.
I found that a bit boring as well, to be honest. So I know that sounds quite bad, but it's, Think and Grow Rich is like an off-the-cuff. Oh, obviously Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I did actually enjoy Rich. I thought Rich Dad, Poor Dad was actually a great book. But no, that's interesting. Ones I hadn't heard of. And lastly, what's your favorite podcast? Do you have like one? Yeah, this one. That was it.
There we go.
No, do you have? That would be the cut. Do you have any podcasts you listen to daily or like weekly, like religiously?
I think I go through phases. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite podcast. I would say the one I'm currently listening to, like when I go to the gym and things like that, is Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. And I do find it really interesting. And dare I say on recording that I don't know if I'm necessarily his biggest fan, but I do like the content, and I resonate with a lot of it that he puts out there.
It is good. Yeah. I think I've got to admit, I've started enjoying that podcast quite a bit as well. He does have a great way of asking people questions and getting information out of people. Why are you not his biggest fan? Just curious.
I have this real issue in general where I don't necessarily think people are being genuine, and I don't get a purely genuine vibe from him. But I don't know the guy personally, so
yeah, of course.
I'm very aware that's my own issue probably. But I just don't. It's the same with I mean, I'm going to start naming these famous people now, so I'm just going to hold off from that. But yeah, there's a few people in like the very public sector who I think a lot of people rave about. That there's just something a little bit amiss for me, and and I've often been proved right over time when I find out certain other things. But again, that could all be shit. Do you know what I mean? We all have confirmation bias to prove what we want to be true, don't we? So
yeah, 100%. Awesome, man. So I appreciate that. It's just a couple of quick ones. I think it's always good to find out just a little bit more about those crucial elements. But do you want to give us a bit of a background? Then we'll start at the start. Who you are, what you do, and how you managed to get to that place.
Yeah. Well, I think you read out a fantastic bio, which I know I wrote, but I was listening to that. I was like, this guy sounds cool. I like him. My background is actually quite different to a lot of people. I grew up in North London. Both my parents are teachers. Their parents were teachers. So it was inevitable that whatever I end up doing, I probably end up teaching. Yeah. So hence I teach people how to trade financial markets. It's always been part of me to pass stuff on when I've learned something and I found value in something. It's just always been part of who I am. And I think maybe part of that is because I grew up quite religious, quite spiritual. My parents weren't particularly religious or spiritual. I mean, they went to church on Sundays every now and then, and I would go along to Sunday school and that type of thing. But I personally really, really bought into the Christianity thing around about the age of 10 or 11, and just kind of went hard in that sector, and again end up growing a business out of that, funnily enough. So when I was about 18, I trained as a counselor within church circles, and then end up having an international business counseling and coaching people in that area, which was pretty cool. I mean, it came with a heck of a lot of pressure, and anybody who watches my Instagram stories or is on my Facebook or anything like that know that I've recently got engaged to a man. So that didn't really work very well with the whole church context that I was in. Now, there's plenty of churches who are fine with it, but the context I was in, that didn't really work very well. So at the age of 26, I had to come out for the first time. Very, very late bloomer. I was saving myself for marriage to a wonderful woman, and she never appeared because she didn't have the right bits and pieces for me, it turned out. So I mean, there's a whole thing in that. But yeah, so I grew up super religious. I went to university though, to do an undergrad in sociology, and ended up doing a master's degree in theology. And I was actually looking at the theology of transformation. I love transformation. I love seeing people go from one place to another place and completely changing or growing or healing an aspect of who they are, whether that's mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial. And one of the things I think I try to bring into everything I do is helping people relate to themselves better, because then they can relate to other people better. So, and it's funny, even with trading. I mean, as you know, you're in the process of learning how to trade. There's such a mindset and such an emotional thing that goes on when you trade, and so there's so much that comes up beyond just being able to see something on the chart. Like there's so much in terms of like emotional attachment to money, emotional attachment to risk, all of that type of thing. So so my background is quite varied. How I got into trading was because of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So friends of mine had encountered him, recommended I read his book, and go to one of his seminars. So there was a seminar in London. I signed up for the property investment seminar. When I got to the event at the Bloomsbury Hotel in London, so I think it was like in October, about just over 8 years ago now. So October this year will be 9 years, which is crazy.
Wow.
And I basically got there and I said, oh, I'm here for the property seminar. And they said, your name's not on the list. Really sorry. I was like, but I've registered. What is going on? So they looked at this list again. My name wasn't there. And then this smart lady called Emma, who became a friend later on, she looked at a different list and she's like, oh, actually, your name is on this list. I was like, well, what list is that? And she said, well, that's the trading list. I was like, oh, okay.
No way.
Yeah, so I accidentally, by some twist of fate, some force of the universe or God, whatever you want to call it, I ended up in a room, a seminar about trading rather than property. And everything was just exactly what I wanted. It was tax-free income, which is brilliant if you're in the UK, depending on where you're listening to this from. But also Dubai, actually, it's tax-free. And I think maybe Switzerland. But anyway, so yeah, tax-free. I could do it for not very much time each day, and I could be anywhere in the world while doing it as long as I had a laptop and an internet connection. Yeah. At the time, I was working in retail, and I just worked my way into the head offices of retail. I'd just come off the shop floor, and I was already bored of retail. I just knew that the career path I was on was just going to be boring, basically. It wasn't going to give me the lifestyle that I wanted. I looked at like my manager's manager, and they were only on about 50k a year with all the stress that goes with that, and I just didn't want that in my life whatsoever. And so I decided to get myself trading, and then I mean, I do have a story about where I made my manager's salary in 1 month because of trading versus what I would have earned in that job, which was quite a moment, to be honest.
I can imagine that's a bit. I remember a big moment for me personally. It was so when I decided to go into my own business, I'd never done sales or anything before, and it was like such a culture shock. And I was just happy I made my previous salary or the manager's salary type salary within a year. Yeah. And I know it sounds stupid, but it's such a like euphoric moment where you're like, oh my God, I did that myself type thing. And then I think you become, and especially if you've done it in a month, I guess that you become then like, you're never ever going to work for someone else ever again, surely.
Well, you say that, but I do have a full-time job.
Really?
Yeah. So I technically have a full-time job. So I do business consultancy as well, again, around change management, which is basically transformation. So I love it. And I get to be exposed to types of people and types of clients that I wouldn't be in my own thing at this stage. So I work with Google, I work with Microsoft internationally. Like I work with all these big names and big clients, and you get to see a different side of the world. And I find it absolutely fascinating. So, but I get to still control a lot of my own time and do everything else I do around.
I was going to say that. How do you manage the time? Because I find that just running one business and like running one business and then trying to learn to trade. And that was something I put a lot of time in. And then all of a sudden something comes up in your business and you're like, this has to take the priority. Then something else comes up. It's like what I always say to people when they put off, I'll do SEO in 6 months once these things align. And you're like, nothing ever aligns perfectly for you. So how do you keep all your ducks in order? And how do you manage to, is it just massive? Is that your time management board behind you?
Unfortunately, this is my to-do list.
All right.
And there's more there. So and there's more here that you can't see as well. So there's a lot going on. So again, that book that I read, The One Thing. So one of the key things I took from that is time blocking. So I block out time for certain things, and taking that to kind of the next level, I diarize my to-do list. So I don't just have a to-do list. I put blocks of time in the diary to do certain things I need to get done. That massively helps. And every week I do that. So I plan the week ahead with what I need to do with my days, knowing what I've got coming up, knowing what meetings I've got that I can't move. And then I fit in the stuff I need to do around that.
What happens when you start to go over then? Is it just the case that you're working till, your evening is like deep into the night in order to get that done? Or sometimes, and there's definitely seasons when I'm operating that way, but generally I try and now, because I've got another half who doesn't like me working 24/7, which is fair enough. I stop about 6 o'clock in the evening generally. Some days I can't do that, but I try to do that, and I try not to work weekends apart from a little bit on Saturday morning, just to kind of keep things going. But I build into my time planner buffer blocks, so if stuff does overrun, I've got a bit of buffer block to do that. And then I also have like a priority list. So what you can't see here is a set of post-it notes numbered 1 to 5. And
if I'm operating optimally, then this happens every day, but I'm rarely operating that optimally, that I would put the core things that need to be done as priority one, or the one thing that needs to be done that day. And then everything else is nice to get done. And if as it gets progressively more important, then it becomes the number one thing that needs to be done that day. And I don't stop until that thing's done. And sometimes that's a 30-minute job. Sometimes that's a 4-hour job. Sometimes that's a weekend job.
That makes sense. Okay, then. So just to go back quickly, because I know you said something at the start, which was both your parents were teachers.
Yeah.
Because obviously one of the things which I think personally, and there's nothing, I respect teachers, or the school system's amazing, but one of the things which I found abundantly clear when I started my first business was like, damn, I'm so unprepared for this, like completely unprepared. Like I know how to build websites, I know how to rank people in Google, I know but I don't know anything about tax. I don't know the difference between revenue and profit. Like I wasn't financially minded. It just wasn't something when I started my business. I was more of a creative and a developer. So coming from that, were you tempted, like how hard was that to steer out of going to university and then doing masters and all of that, and actually going, I'm going to steer myself in a different direction? Like how do you find that, and how do you think we can overcome that at the minute? Do you think it is an issue, the fact that we teach people to be employees, not employers?
So it's a really tricky one, because obviously like there's a load of rhetoric in the business world and the personal development world about how awful school is for not giving people business skills. But let's call a spade a spade. If you're going to be a large business owner, you need employees.
Yeah, of course.
So where are they going to come from? Like,
100%.
do you know what I mean? Like you really don't want everyone in your business being an entrepreneur that's going to take your stuff and run with it and leave you and set up their own thing. You don't want that. That's horrendous. I mean, you expect some of that, and some of my students, I'm sure, will end up doing that, and I actually want to help them. So I'm creating ways to actually help them do that in a way which is mutually beneficial rather than tearing. And there's loads of different ways in which you can do that. If they choose to be honest and have integrity about the fact that's what they're going to do. Some of them don't, and then they get cut off, and you don't want to cross me. So I think school doesn't prepare us for life. I think it also doesn't prepare us for business. I would rather school prepared us for life in general. And then if you have an interest in business, because not everyone does. No. Some people don't care about tax. Some people are never going to need to know about that. But if you do have an interest in that, I think school could do a better job in helping you learn the things that are actually going to be of use to you based upon your passions and what you feel your purpose is on the planet. But also at school, how many people really are clear on their purpose and their passion? Yeah. Most of us stumble into the things which we find out we're going to be passionate about. Like I did. I turned up in the wrong seminar and found trading. That was chance. That was luck. That was whatever.
No, it's a good point, I guess, because how can you train everyone to be, say, the top 5% or top 10%? It's not going to work for everyone then. So do you think that maybe it should be a bit more adaptive at school, so they identify people, say, who aren't academic but maybe are fantastic at with their hands? Do you know what I mean? And they get them into apprenticeships earlier. Do you know, like that type of thing? Because I think that was what I found, I guess, was my personal problem with it, I guess, was I felt there was a bit of like a blanket, there was, it was like this one way of learning, and it's, you have to memorize information and then regurgitate it in a test. Yeah. And I just feel like now as well, especially with it feels like there should be a test for how to use Google to solve problems now. Because that's the way people don't memorize anything now. It's all into Google. So yeah, it sounds like it probably needs to be a bit more. But what do your parents think about it? Are they still teachers or?
Well, they were teachers until they retired. So but they're both retired now. But again, back in the day, anybody who had a career like that actually could do pretty well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, they progressed up in the teaching ranks, but never to being a head teacher or anything like that. But they still had a decent salary, and house price and everything were fine. So my parents have actually done quite well financially. My dad made some good financial decisions over his lifetime. Yeah. So they are fine. I don't think that's the case if I was to become a teacher today, though. I think teachers have a very, very hard time, way overworked, way overstressed, way underpaid. My goodness, they don't get enough respect whatsoever or enough pay. And we keep putting people in government who are in charge of the education system who've never been in the education system from a managerial perspective. And all of a sudden they're in charge of it. So how the heck they're meant to make decent decisions on the behalf of teachers is beyond me. But anyway, that's a different political conversation.
Different group. Yeah, so I'm sure we could go on about them at the minute. But awesome. So I guess the other point I wanted to touch upon was you said about being religious, and then obviously coming out as gay. And congratulations for that. I think it's amazing, and you look super happy when you got engaged as well. So good for you. It's a nerve-wracking experience as well, proposing. So I really hope that goes really, really well for you. But how did you find that weighing that up then with being religious and then having that? That must have been like quite a big concern, especially if you are very, very religious. And how long did it how long did it take you to come to terms with that?
Really good question, and it really wasn't easy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Especially because I was in a position of leadership, and so people looked to me, and there was a load of pressure for me to be basically this big church leader person. I mean, I would get told off for smoking a cigar. Do you know what I mean? And all of that, like the level of pure living that I was being asked to live as a late teen and as a early 20s was just crazy. And I did my best. I mean, at one point I didn't drink for 5 years.
Wow.
And I would still get told off. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what more do you want? So I kind of feel like I think it's tricky because there's lots of things I feel like I had to grieve and still do on some days. Like I had to grieve after I left that system and that belief system, grieve all the friends and the relationships that I built over 10 years worth of my life who felt like family, who now didn't talk to me.
Really? Just completely cut you off?
Yeah, wow. Not all of them, but some of them.
That must have been really hard.
Yeah. I had to grieve the idea of having a normal life in terms of having a wife and having kids, like in the natural way. I would love to have kids in the natural way, but it's never going to happen. So I had to grieve that. And it had been something I've been thinking about since I was 13 years old. I was that weirdo that I wrote letters to my future kids and stuff like that because I was so excited. Yeah. So kids is definitely something which is on the cards at some point, just going to obviously have to be very different.
Yeah.
I had to grieve the normal adolescent life where drinking, like smoking, being a bit rebellious, like making out with people, discovering yourself at that age. Do you know, like, but even just finding out who you are sexually, like I didn't have sex until I was 26. Like, wow. Yeah, because I was being pure and I was saving myself for marriage and all of that sort of stuff. So I didn't even realize I was gay or even had any gay inclinations until I was in my mid-20s.
That's really interesting.
Everything was just shut down, like completely. Yeah. Because I was so, and there's reasons why that was because I experienced trauma as a youngster, and so I picked religion and spirituality, which was super black and white, to give me a sense of safety. So were your parents religious then, or did you find that by yourself? Not really. So they were Christian, and I would say they're Christian, they're believers, but they weren't like religious.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I just wrongly assumed that you go into it because, and I think because especially this day and age as well, like Christianity, especially in the UK, I guess it's like, I'm personally not religious, respect people who are religious, there's no problem with it. But I guess it's becoming not the norm, well, from my perspective anyway. So you kind of still assume wrongly that, it's their parents and then you pass this down, but to actually find it yourself must have been, and then to obviously go through that flip side of the experience of going, wow, in your 20s and being like, actually, this isn't what I thought, like things are different. So how have you pivoted from that then? Because I imagine that was a big impact when you're trying to run a business as well. That must be quite a big thing to contend with as well, weighing all that up. Yeah, and I think I've always been a little bit rebellious, to be honest. Even though I was very regimented religious, I've always been a bit rebellious, and I've always strived for growth and the new thing and the next thing, even within that context. So I end up in a very, very spiritual element of Christianity because I always wanted more. I wanted something to be real. I wanted to experience stuff. And I think with my parents being teachers as well, and I rebelled at school. I basically didn't turn up to A levels. It's amazing I ended up getting a master's degree, to be honest, because no one expected that. I was so not wanting to be there. And I think that all of those experiences, like being religious when my parents weren't, and having to be the Christian, the pure one in a context where most of my friends weren't, but still having to maintain that, and then having to leave that as well,
all of those experiences were incredibly difficult, but built incredible resilience. And so I think you could look at my life from the outside and think, oh, you've had it a bit easy. But if you actually were to be inside living it, the amount of resilience that I had to have to maintain true north for myself or whatever is insane. And I think that is a skill that I transfer over into business. I never really, what's the word for it? I never really think I can't do something. I question if I want to do something, but I never really question if I can't do something. And so I often will bite off more than I can chew, and then figure out how to chew it after, which is tended to be the way. But I think, just that resilience of this is what I am, this is what I do. And that's really developed over the past few years. As I've kind of accepted myself, my flaws, my good points, all of that, and just let that be that way. And I used to teach for Rich Dad, and I felt like even when I was teaching for Rich Dad, because you're within somebody else's company, you have to behave in a certain way.
Yeah, of course.
Now it's my own company, and I teach people completely off my own back and use my own systems and methods and everything. I can completely be myself. So I can be on a Zoom call and make wildly inappropriate comments and sexual innuendos left, right, and center, because that is me, that is my humor, that's my comedy. And if people don't like it, then this isn't the community for you.
Else. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, people have to find their own group. So thanks for sharing that with me, by the way. But so obviously one of the things I know that you said is you've invested a lot of money in courses in that type of thing previously. I've seen you say that. So was that going through the Rich Dad? Because that's pretty expensive, isn't it? Going through that course. And how did that go then? So you turn up, obviously you go, okay, they're going to teach me how to be a swing trader, or they're just going to teach me trading or whatever. I'm assuming it was like a 1-day seminar, and then they sell you like an £1,000 course or whatever. So how did that process go? And was that a big jump for you? Like, where did you get the money from that time?
Yeah. So it was a free seminar to a weekend training, which cost about, I think it was either 500 or 1,000. I can't entirely remember, although I do have the receipt somewhere, which is quite cool.
No way.
And so it was a weekend course. And then on the weekend course, they tried to sell you on to further mentorship or coaching, which I think started at about 3-4 grand and went up to like 15 grand or something. Yeah. So I could only afford 9 grand or 10 grand. So I took out a credit card. I took out a personal loan, which I was paying 16% interest on. Yeah, ridiculous stuff. But at the same point, I wanted it. I knew this is what I wanted to do. And so I made it happen. And my parents couldn't lend me any money. They also kind of said no, and I can understand why. Yeah. So I made it happen. And I think, again, that's something which I always do in my business. I do what I need to do to make it happen. It doesn't always work out. Like any business person who says, like, oh yeah, everything I've tried to achieve has worked out. No, like, no. Let's not pretend. You try things, some things fail, some things work.
Yeah, usually it's the harsh failures which steer you along the way then. So you borrowed all that money then, and then what made it, so why were you so convinced? Like, had you already started trading at that point, or is it literally just like you just know that?
No, I'd never traded before. Yeah, never traded before. Always had an interest in it, but never ever traded before. I just wanted it, and I'm an easy sell. Like I think I was actually the only person that weekend who actually signed up to any further training. Wow. But again, that gave me a certain level of contact with the coaches that maybe other people, I mean, I had paid for it, to be fair. But I'm very good at building relationship. So I intentionally built relationship with the key coaches and turned up to events for free and would pay for more time with them. And I would just work at the back of the room or whatever, and I would do testimonials for them because I was actually trading, and I'd left my job after 7 months. So then I had a lot more time. And yeah.
So what was what did you have to get to earn in a month then in order to quit your job? Was it like you got to half your salary, or did you beat your salary? Or
I didn't beat my salary. No, I matched about half my salary, but I was in my early 20s. I didn't have a lot of expenses. I didn't need to do much, and then I grew it from there as well. So I got to about half my salary and then was like, right, this is working for me, I'm off. Which again, probably too soon, to be honest, but I was just so sick of being in that job. I was bored out my tits, so I just had to get out of there.
Sometimes you have to go all in as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you know you need to go, because it's such a big time, like having a full-time 8 hours or 8 hours a day plus your commute, and then you come home, you're shattered, it's hard to find the time and the clarity. So That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So carry on. Sorry.
So then, I left my job, started traveling the world basically from that point on. And then, so that's where like my tens of thousands of pounds worth of education started happening. Because I was like, I literally followed my mentor to South Africa once, end up speaking on stage while I was there with Robert Kiyosaki, which was quite cool.
Yeah.
And then I think there was about 5,000-6,000 people there. And so I was just spending money getting around the right people basically. And that's why like, my courses aren't massively cheap. They're also, for me, nowhere near expensive compared to what I've paid to be around the right people and get the skill set that I have. So I'm like, again, if people don't want to pay it, they don't want to pay it. But I know this system works. And if you work the system, you'll get to where you want to get to.
How did you go about then getting into being actually a coach within that Robert Kiyosaki? What's it called? And what's it actually called? Robert Kiyosaki?
They call it Rich Dad Education. They called it, yeah.
So how did you get to being a coach of that? Did you have to hit certain criteria? Because again, you always have to. So that's the thing with going to some of these courses, and I like it and stuff. But you think obviously they're going under this umbrella, but those people underneath who are training, what's their sort of credentials? Would you say that they were quite due diligent on that? Because I guess you're training people who were in the same position as you, chucking 15 grand down or whatever for some training. So how did you find that? Did you enjoy the coaching?
I love teaching people. I really do. I mean, I won't lie. I get really bored at the early stages now. Like if it's just click here, I'm so bored of that stuff now. Yeah, of course. But that's why I've raised up other coaches in my business to do those parts, because they're not bored of it and they enjoy it. So people get a better experience with them at that level than they would do if I was doing it at that level. I mean, I still give my all to it, but I'm just dying inside. But in terms of with Rich Dad, so first thing that happened was I left my job to trade full time. So I was a successful trader. I did a testimonial for them from the front of the room, and they realized I could speak in front of people and I was okay with it. So then they used me for some of the initial trainings, and then further into deeper trainings as I kind of was having success myself and continued success myself. But they are fairly diligent on that. So for example, I ended up teaching on property investment as well for them, and they would not let me do it, even though I knew all the content, until I'd had property and had been through a few shit things with property as well. They are fairly good at that. I mean, I don't know if they still are or if they always are, but with me at least they were.
How different is what you learn in that initial course to actually what you teach now? Like in the sense of like the swing trader, is that what they were teaching, or were they teaching everything? You were trading and then you niche down on swing trading? So
I wouldn't say I niche down on swing trading because the skill set that I teach, you can do day swing position, even scalping if you wanted to, because it's technical analysis, pattern recognition stuff. So a lot of that is quite similar in terms of the base skill, how we apply it and the method we go through to learn it. I prefer my method. I think it's more efficient, and you only need 30 minutes a day in order to do that. The other thing with Rich Dad is it is a very broad spectrum, and it depends where you are in the world. So if you're based in the US, they're not going to teach you the style of trading that I necessarily do. They're going to look more at options trading and that type of thing, which I don't know why, because options is just ridiculously complicated and actually doesn't necessarily give you better returns. So I would still rather, if I was based in the US, trade the way that I trade. And we do have some American students who are part of Star Trading who are doing really well. So it shows that this style works absolutely everywhere.
Okay, so I guess because this is one of the things when I initially listened to you, and obviously I listened to you initially through Ken Mack. I hadn't heard of you personally, and obviously that endorsement's super important. But one of the things I've always been skeptical of in your industry is, everyone, this, trade 30 minutes a day and become a millionaire type thing. It's like there's, and buy this course, which is like an off the shelf type course, which they sort of churn out. So how realistic is it for someone to actually trade 30 minutes a day? And do like without it being a sales pitch?
Yeah, highly. If you have the right system in place, then it is highly possible. And it's a funny one because even my students who do become my students don't believe me when I say that. But they're like, well, maybe it'll take an hour, or like, and I can afford now, so maybe it can take an hour. Now, I will say that you're not going to be trading in 30 minutes in your first day. That's not going to happen. Like, as you know, there's time you have to put in to learn the skill. Once you know the skill, though, it is 30 minutes a day or less. I mean, I'm definitely less than 30 minutes a day when it comes to my trading. And I remember Calvin, one of our students, South African guy, he been with us 4 months, started trading live, hit 13% in his first month trading.
Wow.
And I said to him, I was like, and how long did it take you each day of like actual trading? He was like, less than 30 minutes. I went, see? And I was like, did you believe me when I first told you that? He was like, no, I didn't believe you. So it's one of those things that is a catchy tagline, but it is true. If you have the right system in place and you follow the star trading method of like what we're looking for in the markets, then we can go through it super, super quick. We just smash through it, and we automate it also.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on a lot of the other I've bought courses before, not specifically in trading, but I know people who have, and then you go, wow, that was like junk, absolute junk. or the people which go, I can just learn all this stuff on YouTube. Like, why should someone say invest? Like, how does yours differ from theirs?
Yeah. So I'll address the YouTube thing first. So there is all the information in the world on YouTube. There is on the internet, full stop. Of course there is. The problem with YouTube is always going to be there's too much information. And so you don't know what to follow. And if you're listening to too many voices, then you're going to really struggle to actually make something work. With trading, there is many different ways you can make trading work. I totally believe that. What's really important is to have some form of feedback mechanism. So that's why I have the course, which you buy. And then if you want that feedback mechanism, it's only £18 a month to be part of that community where you get the feedback, you can ask questions. And yes, of course, there's mentorships and things like that as well, if people want. But I've been very, very intentional with the way I've created the course. It actually took me, and people don't realize this, it took me 2 years to build that course because I wanted to make sure that it kind of went methodically, step by step, that the brain could actually take it on in a very, very logical way. So what people tend to find going through my course is they'll watch a video, have a question, and then the next video addresses that question, because I've so intentionally tried to pace it out and put it together to do that. So you're not left thinking for too long, well, I'm missing a bit of information now. And it all builds to the point where you have strategies and you can create strategies. And then once you've built that knowledge, it's the next big step in trading, which is applying that knowledge. So then we have the next hit of that training in the course itself is to show you how to do that. Which is always a tricky thing for people. And which is why I'm actually, with people who are part of the support group, do extra bonus trainings around that particular aspect of trading.
So obviously one of the things which I found, because originally when I signed up to it, I thought swing trading was day trading. I know obviously you do different. Why did you, with swing trading, is it just because of the time?
Just the time.
Fact that, So do you do day trading as, I'm assuming you...
Now, no, I have in the past, and I was successful at it, but I just don't enjoy it.
Just time consuming.
It's just time. I'm my personality type is not wired to sit in front of a screen for that long.
Okay, that's interesting.
I just can't do it. I need to be up and about, or my brain needs to be focusing on different things. I mean, if you ever look at my internet browser, it's got 100 different tabs open at the same time. So when it comes to day trading, you have to be focused. And I just had to be honest with myself. I wasn't that focused. And so why force myself to be that way when I can still make really good returns and then do everything else I'm going to do with my time by trading just 30 minutes a day?
You know, with one of the big things, which obviously, if anyone, when people are listening to this, they've heard you say before, in the UK, it's tax-free. Can you explain how trading in the UK can be tax-free?
Yes. So in the UK, the UK government, actually, let me go back a step. So in the UK, you can use certain brokers who allow you to have what's called a spread betting account. So because it's a spread betting account, it's not actually gambling, by the way, they just call it betting. So because it's a spread betting account, you aren't actually trading the physical assets themselves. So you never actually own a stock, you never actually own the crypto, you never actually own the gold or the currency that you're trading. So because you don't actually own it, the broker can call it spread betting, and it can fall under the category of gambling. And so because it falls under the category of gambling, the UK government do not tax gambling profits.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that's what makes it tax-free. So although it's classified as gambling from a tax perspective in the UK, the process we go on to trade is not gambling.
I know this is well, maybe not a silly question, but obviously, say you've built up a huge account and then you want to withdraw that account into your bank. Do you still have to declare anything on like a tax return, or is it just like you're not interested?
I would say speak to a tax professional.
Yeah, because it's pretty amazing. I mean, from your own thing, because I know you're big on growing your account and then it compounding over time, which is obviously really, really smart. When do you make those decisions, or how did you find was the right time to make those decisions and go, actually, I'm going to take some of this out now. It's going to reduce my budget, but it's going to reduce potentially my compounding, but I'm going to go and invest in some properties or diversify my investment. Like, how did you get to that stage?
It's a really good question. And I think the key thing is making sure you have enough money to live on. So whatever you take out of your account, can you still, with your average monthly return over whatever time period you've been trading, still live fairly comfortably off of that? Now, an even better way to do it, and this is slightly more advanced, once people get to this stage, I'd have a more in-depth conversation with them about it. But what you would probably want to do is take out of your account 3 to 6 months worth of living money, whilst leaving enough money in your account to A, grow it still, and B, live off of. So you don't actually have to touch that 6 months worth of living money. Yeah. So then you've got that buffer. And again, your trading doesn't have to perform in order to put food on your table. That's a dangerous place to be in. Yeah. And then when you can do that, you can start being creative with what you do with the excess money. So that's when I started putting money into property and that type of thing.
That's interesting. So you're very big on diversifying, so trading should never be your only form of investment. What other things would you recommend, or what other things do you invest in personally then? So you said property.
Yes.
Is there anything else?
For me, what I currently hold is I hold crypto. I don't trade it, but I hold crypto. I hold stocks and shares. I hold commodities like gold and silver. I hold watches. I hold art.
Interesting.
Did I say obviously property as well?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's go on to obviously the crypto bubble then. So you say you hold cryptos. Are they all sort of stable coins? Are you Ethereums, you Bitcoins, or have you got your altcoins as well? Or
I've got some altcoins. Yeah, I'm fairly well spread, but my major holdings are Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Do you see it continuing to go up? Like you said, it's a long-term play for you.
For me, it's a long-term play. I'm holding for 5-10 years. That's my plan.
Interesting. And when did you actually manage to get into that? Is it
only recently, really. So only the past 18 months. So I'm fairly late to it. Again, it's a big thing about who you're around. So the people I was around initially when kind of Bitcoin came on the scene, when Bitcoin first came on the scene, I remember being told about it by some man in the gym about 10 years ago who was a bit creepy and looked at me while trying his junk. And I was like, I don't think that's for me. But I knew nothing about finances and investments at that point. And years later, when I heard about it, a lot of the people I was around were forex traders who were like, nah, it's a load of rubbish, blah, 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 blah. So that's who I was around. And then actually, as I started researching it, looking into it more and being around different types of people, I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is something in this. Yeah. So I came to the party quite late, if I'm honest, when it comes to crypto. But yeah, I do think in the long run, it's going to be around and it's going to go up. I heard you call it a bubble, so maybe you have a different opinion. But...
No, I got burnt by it. I won't lie. Like I'm completely open with my winnings and my failings, and I got into crypto, into your shit coins, and I made a super, super crazy amount of money very, very quickly. And within 24 hours, it was like, pop, and it was gone. And I was like, Jesus. Like, although it was such a good learning experience for me, because it was by far, it was the greatest thing to show me actually how made up money is. It's so made up. And
it's a game. Money is a game.
It is a complete game. But then that was something, again, which... sort of drove me over to you and what you were saying, because you are very, and I'd like you to explain this, you're very, very stringent and critical, like you're very focused on managing your risk and risk management, right? And could you explain that to me? Because that's one thing people are worried about, I guess, with trading. They think like they're going to do it, they're going to press the wrong button, and then they're going to lose. Like, I'm sure you've got a horror story you could probably share with people.
I've got quite a few horror stories, not of my own, because I always follow the principles. But so I always say that the star trading method is low risk, high reward. And that's because every trade that we place, we only ever risk 1% of our account balance. So if we've got an account, I'm just going to use simple maths here. So if we have £100,000 in our account, we're risking 1%, which is £1,000. So 1,000 compared to 100,000 is really not a lot of money. So A, we can manage ourselves better emotionally. B, we're not leveraged, we're not using margin, we're not over risked, and we can still be making very, very good percentage returns on a monthly basis. I mean, really, star trading students should be aiming for 5% and up, following the methods and the strategies that we've got. And that is on their account per month. And if they're in the UK or Dubai, tax free. So
can you explain the important principle just briefly about people go, well, that's just 1%. It's not very sexy. When you hear the word 1%, it's not very sexy.
Yeah.
But can you just explain the concept of compound interest and how that financially it's sort of like the game changer of game changers, right?
It really is. Yeah. So there's loads of stuff around it, and I could do a whole seminar on this, but just in short, so super quick. When we risk 1%, we stand to make back at least 1% profit, if not more. Ideally 2 to 1, 3 to 1, which means off our 1% risk, we could win 1%, 2%, 3% or more on a single trade, on one trade. Mm-hmm. So if we have just 5 trades that win on a month and they're only a 1-for-1 risk to reward, then that 1% risk per trade has made us 5% on those trades. So that's brilliant. If you make 5% per month, and you compound that in a year, you're looking at about 70% return on your money, which is phenomenal. If you make 10% per month, you pretty much triple your money on an annual basis. And we have some of our students that are doing that. One of my students who's been trading now for nearly as long as me, but not quite as long as me, he said to me the other day, Lewis, I'm at the point now, and he's a day trader, by the way. I'm at the point now where if I hit 100% return in a month, that's a bad month. And that's the level he's gotten to. So that's where you can take it to if you want to. It's still following the systems and the processes that we talk about. The reason 1% is what we stick to is because of something called random distribution. So we do not win every single trade that we place. That doesn't happen. So we don't know when the winners are going to come. We don't know when the losers are going to come. So if I have a set out of my 100 trades, we know we're going to get between 30 and 40 of those 100 trades be losers, but we don't know when they're going to come. So if I say have a bank of losers, a run of losers, and let's say I have a bank of 5 losing trades in a row, each one is worth 1%. That 1% after a row of losers is worth 5% loss. So I've had a 5% loss. So if I increase my 1% risk to be a bit more sexy to even just 2%, and I have a bank of 5 losers, I've now lost 10% of my account across the same trades just because I've got higher risk.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
And obviously the way you manage your risk is with stop losses.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know, with someone who's listening to this and would go, I don't want to trade every day. It's not me. I hate charts. Obviously, you hear a lot of people on about invested in the S&P 500 and those types of things. How is that something that you would, well, not recommend, but is that something that you teach to people, that sort of philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's not trading. That is definitely investing. So I think if you want to make good investment decisions, actually having a foundational understanding of technical analysis and what the chart is doing is really, really important. Yes, you can. And I know there's quite a big push on it, and I'm not entirely opposed to it. Just buy index trackers. Like, if you don't know what else to do, just buy an index tracker. Okay, great. But what if you happen to, again, it depends on the stage of life you're in. So if you are in your 80s, buying an index tracker at this particular point is probably not a good idea. Yeah. If you're young, you're under 30, then buying an index tracker, we know is probably a good idea over the next 10, 20 years, probably, if previous patterns are to be repeated and trusted. But we are due a crash at some point. I'm not going to do a Robert Kiyosaki and declare a month that the crash is coming. Yeah, we know at some point there's going to be a crash. So are you better off doing something else with your money, like educating yourself and learning a skill set, which means even when there is a crash, you can make money trading the markets down, and you can make money trading the markets when they go up. And then you've got a pot of cash, which is liquid, that when we hit a big crash in the S&P or whatever, or the FTSE or markets internationally, buy a load of the shit up with the money you've created from trading, and then you've got a long-term asset as well. I think that's
interesting. One thing which I guess people might shout, and I know we'll wrap it up quickly, but one thing which shouts out is you saying that you can make money when the market's going down. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's called shorting the market, and it's literally the same as, well, you've got short and long. Long is when you're trading as the market go up. Short trading as the market goes down. And it's literally the same, just reversed. So when you go long, everyone understands you buy something, it goes up in price, you sell it, and you've made profit. Shorting is the reverse, where instead of hitting the buy button first on the broker, you hit the sell button first. So you sell it at, say, 100, it goes down to 50, you buy it back, and then you've got 50 profit as a result of that. So it is a bit of a mind fuck when you first hear it. But I mean, I could do a whole explanation as to how it works, but you basically, when you sell something you don't own, it's because you've borrowed it. Technically, you borrowed it off the broker. So you sell the thing you've borrowed for one price, then you buy it back, the same item, for a lower price. And then when you've bought it back, you hand it back to the broker. So you now haven't borrowed anything and you've just made some money.
Awesome. Obviously, from a marketing background, that's my sort of background. How has marketing played an impact in your business? And if you were starting again potentially, what were the strategies that you found to be great if someone was looking to grow their business through their marketing? What's worked for you?
Be yourself. Put yourself out there. Use partnerships. I haven't done any paid advertising yet.
Wow.
So I mean that does start at the end of this month, so you'll be seeing my ads at some point, I'm sure. So yeah, but so far everything in my business has been organic, word of mouth. Incentivize people to talk about you. Give commissions and thank yous and things like that. If people talk about you and it results in a sale, why not? Be generous. I'm very, very generous with my thank you scheme. I don't really like calling it a commission scheme.
Commission, yeah.
Weird, yeah, because they're not working for me. I feel like commission is like you're working for me. So I just a refer a friend thing, and if someone refers a friend and they say brilliant, then I'll give them a very generous thank you as a result.
Well, your industry is full of, well, I wouldn't say full of, but I've been approached by quite a few pyramid schemes. There seems to be a lot of pyramid schemes in your industry where it's like, learn to be a trader and get 10 of your mates to join as well. But how when looking back at everything you've achieved, if you had to tell either your younger self something 10 years ago, or if you could tell yourself something in 10 years time, which would you do and what would you say?
So 10 years ago, I was 23, so I wasn't out the closet. So I would tell myself to go and get laid. Get on with it. Yeah.
Such a good piece of advice.
Start drinking, just have sex with as many people as possible. Just live your life. Beyond that, 10
years from now, what
yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Carry on. What else would you tell your 10-year-olds?
I would say focus on something. Develop a skill, smash it out. And I think if I was to go back, and I would just focus on trading straight away.
Really?
Even at the start of my trading journey, I looked at network marketing for like product stuff. I looked at Amazon, Facebook shipping. I looked at all these different types of businesses and explored doing them. And they were all just naff compared to trading. Like there's so many moving parts, and with trading, it's so much easier and simpler. It's just me and the chart, learning the process, doing it. And I think whatever if I had ended up picking one of those other things, I know I would have ended up teaching those things as well if I'd made a success of it, because it's just in my nature to do it.
That's pretty good. And last question, if you were the podcaster right now, asking the questions, is there one question that you'd like me to ask you?
That's really good. What's a good question to ask? A good question, I think, is what is the foundational skill you have which has led to your success?
Okay, go.
I would just say not giving up.
Well, interesting.
That's
just resilience.
Just keeping on going.
Are you born with resilience, or is it something you can develop?
I think it's very hard to say. I believe in a lot of genetic stuff, like as characteristics, but I do believe nurture has a lot to do with it. And by nurture, I don't mean what my parents did. I mean, there is elements of that by what life has done to you and the experiences you've had. So I think what experience I've had of this thing we call life has built a lot of resilience in me.
Have you found, because obviously I imagine a lot of the things you've been through, especially with the religion and coming out and all the rest of the things what you mentioned, obviously you bounce back, you become more resilient. Did you find it hard to keep empathetic during that process and not become cold? Because I think that's quite easy for people to do, is when you start getting hit, you go, well, screw you and screw everyone, and you start becoming, you lose your empathy. Is that something which you ever found happening, or were you really, really good at toughening up, being stronger, but then at the same time not losing your empathy and not becoming a dick?
It's a great question. I think for me, it was actually the reverse. So because of my own trauma and shit from childhood, I was emotionally shut off. I wasn't engaged emotionally. I didn't cry, didn't do anything like that.
Wow.
I was a dick. I had very, very little empathy, other than fake present empathy of this is how I should behave in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, for example, I mean, this is awful. I've never said this out loud before, but I remember my girlfriend at the time when I was in school, because, you know, got to act it, got to fake it. No, I did like her. But her dad died, and I used that as a reason to get out of school. And I was way more excited about the fact that I was getting out of school than the fact that I was upset for her that she'd lost her dad at the age of like 14, 15. Like, what an arse. So, but again, teenager, everyone's a dickhead as a teenager. So then as I went through my own journey of healing and therapy and everything like that, and realizing the stuff that I'd been through and processing it and going through the stuff that I then went through in later life and leaving the church and all of the crap that came with that, I think it just made me way more empathetic, and I'm way more understanding. I'm way more caring. I'm way more, empathetic as a result of all of that.
That's really good, man. Thanks so much for your time. And obviously, if people want to connect with you, how do they go about following you? What's your Instagram and what's your website, that type of stuff?
Yeah, so best way is Instagram, and then all my links to everything I do are in my Instagram bio. So my Instagram is at Lewis, Lewis _ Crompton, CROM for Mike, PTON for November. But please type it in carefully, because there's 100 scammers out there pretending to be me trying to get your money. So that was one
of the questions I wanted to ask you. It's just why do the scammers focus so heavily on you? Because that's something you see constantly. Is you have so many scammers.
I think partly because I'm pretty. That's a big one. I think it's because I my brand is quite honest, I think. So it's a personal, I'm quite honest. I do say it as it is. I'm not overselling. So there's a lot of trust in me. And I think partly because I've taught for Rich Dad, there's a certain level of trust that comes with that as well. Yeah. But if you ever get a message from me asking you to give me money to trade on your behalf, that is not me. I'm only ever going to ask you to give me money to teach you to trade for yourself. So I will ask you your money, but it's to teach you how to do it for yourself.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And what's the website?
Startrading.com, I think.
And roughly, if I'll let you just double check that. Roughly, if someone's thinking about it and again, this is going to cost me tens of thousands of pounds, because I know you said £15,000 for Robert Kiyosaki's. Roughly ballpark, how much does it cost to get started?
With me or with Robert?
Yeah, no, with you.
Oh, with me. So course starts at 500, although that's due to go up, and then mentorships start from 2,000 and go up from there.
I mean, let's be honest, £500 to learn those skills which you could use. And I think one of the key things as well is, you know, what's huge right now is being a digital nomad. And you mentioned that before, of like being able to pick up a laptop and go to anywhere in the world and work and make money. And it's one of those core skills that you can do. And the markets are always going to be there. So it is actually a lifelong skill that you're learning that will see you through. So it was startrading.com?
It's startradingnow.com.
Startradingnow.com. Awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for jumping on the call with me. And check Lewis out and all his content. I've personally been through it. I wouldn't advise it if I didn't think it was great. And cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.